Greetings and salutations, friends. We are once again back and exploring our new series, Enduring Mysteries. Tonight is one of my favorites. I first heard about this sometime in the 90s and got John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies. John Keel is the original sort of civilian, I suppose, investigator who went down to Point Pleasant after reading some of these reports in the local newspaper of a mysterious winged creature that was being observed and cited, and people were making reports to local authorities. It became a national story at the time. So some would argue that the Mothman has been with us forever. I've heard other researchers sort of linking the mystery of the Mothman with mythological birdman creatures. And we see historical evidence of birdmen. I guess that's the only way you could describe them is birdmen throughout history. Most notably, of course, in ancient Egypt, where there are many paintings of some of the Egyptian gods, which had the body of a man and the head of a bird. And there are also other examples in other forms of mythology of mysterious birdmen, winged creatures that were somewhat like a man and somewhat like a bird, usually depicted with wings. And I also always found it interesting that the many of the depictions of the mythological birdmen were always sort of warriors with weapons. So, but for our purposes tonight, we're going to be focusing on where it began in more modern times, the legend of the mysterious Mothman. And that would be in 1966 in Point Pleasant. I mentioned that John Keel was the original investigator covering the case. He did so along with local newspaper reporters who were already covering some of the sightings' help. Now, legend has it that the Mothman, which originated really in Point Pleasant, the original sightings in 1966, legend has it that the Mothman lives in a mysterious area near Point Pleasant called the TNT area. A strange and mysterious place. The TNT area, I'm going to share my screen, is the site of former weapons manufacturing facilities that were in use during World War II. And if you take a look at the TNT area in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, this looks like a place a monster lives. That's what I'm going to say. So there are some mysterious underground facilities that people have located in this area. And again, these are former munitions manufacturers that were in use during World War II. Now, by 1966, most of them were shut down. The area was cordoned off because there may still be dangerous or hazardous materials, even explosives. But it became, this area became something of a lover's lane, if that makes sense. Teenagers would drive there, hang out there, drink there. And some of the Mothman sightings were in and around this mysterious TNT area, as it's called. We can see some underground facilities, bunkers of sorts. So, yes, a very mysterious place that some attributed, some decided after the Mothman was seen a multitude of times in this area that this is indeed where the Mothman lived. He lived inside these tunnels that are throughout this complex, apparently. And interestingly, many of these things are still there. If you drive down to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, you can just walk around this place. It's not very well secured anymore, which is an interesting field trip. If you're so inclined, I encourage you to go down to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and also make sure that you visit this place where many of the sightings were. So it's interesting. We can trace the very first sighting of the Mothman to the year 1966. And this is where the story gets creepy, because apparently the first two people that actually saw the Mothman and reported seeing it were two grave diggers in Clendenin, West Virginia, which is near Point Pleasant. These two grave diggers were at a cemetery, and they were digging a grave in that cemetery. This was their job. And they saw a black, shadowy, strange figure fly over their heads while they were digging a grave in the cemetery they worked in. So yes, the first two people who actually saw the mysterious Mothman were digging a grave in a graveyard at the time. Graveyards are creepy enough, but add a flying winged man with glowing red eyes, it's almost too much. The sightings would later come to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. People were reporting seeing it in and around the TNT area and other areas surrounding Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The frequency of the sightings ramped up after the first few media reports. So it may be that the media played a role in the wave of sightings in 1966 in Point Pleasant. We have a lot of the original reports. In fact, I was able to locate one of the original newspaper articles that was from 1966. It's titled "Couples See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something," and we're going to cite fair use. I'm going to share my screen here. This is an interesting article from the time, and will give us some historical perspective. This is a transformative work. We're going to cite fair use here, citing this article as we educate the public and discuss the contents of the article. So it's titled "Couples See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something." The following is a Point Pleasant Register article from Wednesday, November 16th, 1966, titled "Couples See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something." The article states two Point Pleasant couples said today they encountered a man-sized bird-like creature in the TNT area about midnight last night. Sheriff's deputies and city police went to the scene about 2 o'clock this morning, but were unable to spot anything. But the two young men telling their story this morning were dead serious and asserted they hadn't been drinking. Steve Millette of 3305 Jackson Avenue and Roger Scarberry of 809 30th Street described the thing as being about 6 or 7 feet tall, having a wingspan of 10 feet, and red eyes about 2 inches in diameter and 6 inches apart. One witness described it, saying it was a man with wings, Millette said. It wasn't like anything you'd seen on TV or in a monster movie. The men and their wives were in Scarberry's car between 11:30 p.m. and midnight when they spotted the creature near the old power plant adjacent to the old National Guard Armory buildings. And again, those National Guard Armory buildings were in that so-called TNT area. So this is very close to other later reported sightings. The creature was seen standing on 3 occasions and was described as being extremely fast. It flew about 100 miles an hour in flight, but it was a clumsy runner. Deputy Millard Halstead said he had seen dust in the vicinity of a coal field, but it could have been caused by the bird, he said. "I'm a hard guy to scare," Scarberry said, "but last night I was for getting out of there." The article goes on to state they did just that, but the thing followed them. They said it was hovering over the car, apparently gliding until they reached the National Guard Armory on Route 62. "We went downtown, turned around, and went back, and there it was again," Millette said. "It seemed to be waiting on us." He said the light gray creature then scurried through a field. It had flown across the top of the car. "It is apparently afraid of light," Millette reasoned. "And maybe it thought it was scaring us off." The young man said they saw the creature's eyes, which glowed red. And this is an important point because the reports after this, many of them cited that the creature had glowing red eyes. The eyes glowed red only when their light shined on it. and it seemed to want to get away from the lights. They said it looked like a man with wings, but that the head was not an outstanding characteristics. Both were slightly pale and tired from lack of sleep during the night following their harrowing experience. They speculated that the thing was living in the vacant power plant, possibly in one of the huge boilers. There are pigeons in all the other buildings, Millette said, but not in that one. Interesting. The article goes on to, the witness goes on to state, if I had seen it while by myself, I wouldn't have said anything, Scarberry commented, but there were 4 of us who saw it. They said it didn't resemble a bat in any way, but maybe you would visualize as an angel. The last time they saw it, it was at the gate of the C.C. Lewis farm on Route 62. They heard a sound of wings flapping, and they said the bird rose straight up like a helicopter. This doesn't have an explanation to it, Millette said. It was an animal, but nothing like I've seen before. When asked if they were going back to look for the creature, yes, Millette said, this afternoon and again tonight. Today, Scarberry said, but tonight, I don't know. And here we see the original actual newspaper article. And by the way, it's interesting that, there are collectors of memorabilia of cryptid creatures and monsters and Bigfoot sightings. And in doing my research, I noticed that you could buy framed copies of this original newspaper article, the first newspaper article about the legendary, mysterious Mothman. I find that interesting, and I may get that and hang it on my wall here, just as a nod to the history of these strange phenomenon. Interesting to note that if you do happen to ever go to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, what you find is a sleepy small town that's in all ways that I could see unremarkable. In other words, nothing really stands out. It seems to be a sleepy small town. There's a local diner, a local general store. It's almost a land that time forgot. But Point Pleasant, because of the Mothman, has become a lot like Roswell in that there is a Mothman museum there. I visited, and there is a Mothman diner, which is interesting, a whole diner that's themed with Mothman, and you can go and get a bite to eat and also buy some Mothman collectibles like t-shirts, hats, pins, all kinds of things. And of course, they sell some of the Mothman books in that diner, and again in the actual museum. So the reports continued past 1966 in the Point Pleasant area, and it's very interesting that later John Keel and others, the original investigator, would speculate that the sightings of the Mothman in the Point Pleasant area had something to do with the impending bridge tragedy that would happen. And interestingly enough, it has been said by many people that sightings of the Mothman are a harbinger of tragedy to come. And this has, of course, led to speculation that these are some sort of warning, angel warning, or interdimensional being warning of impending death and catastrophic doom. There have been Mothman sightings apparently at the Fukushima plant before that happened, and also in Russia, and many other tragic events. 9/11, people claim there was Mothman sightings right before 9/11. An interesting side note to the Mothman phenomenon is that when there becomes a hotspot of Mothman sightings, shortly thereafter, there generally tends to be a big tragedy happen. In the case of Point Pleasant, it was a bridge collapse. Now, the bridge collapse would later be shown to be not attributable to supernatural means, of course, but structural error. But nonetheless, John Keel believed that people connected the Mothman sightings to the Silver Bridge tragedy because they were trying to make sense of a senseless event. And more on John Keel, because I think it's important that we recognize John Keel's role in popularizing the myth of the mysterious Mothman. John Keel was an interesting figure. In today's terms, he might be considered a conspiracy land character because he covered strange and unusual topics. Um, Much like a Nick Redfern of today, or someone like McMars. But he was from another era and certainly an interesting guy. Besides writing the original Mothman book, he also was an independent writer who wrote for many different magazines like Weird Tales and Men's Adventure magazine and more. So, just a note on John Keel, the original, really the person that popularized the Mothman. Keel was born in Hornell, New York, the son of a small time band leader. His parents separated and he was raised by his grandparents. We'll move on to his career. It's interesting. After he left the military, he worked as a foreign radio correspondent in Paris, Berlin, Rome, and Egypt. In 1957, he published Jadoo, a book describing his time in Egypt and India, investigating the Indian rope trick. The Indian rope trick is one of those things. You ever see this? It's where an Indian sorcerer will throw a rope up in the air, and then a little boy will climb all the way up the rope. And some people didn't believe that that trick was real, that it was just a myth. John Keel investigated that, and given my history in the world of stage magic, I have that book. And that, of course, is an interesting read. He also covered the legendary Yeti. In 1966, he produced The Spy and the Superhero spoof novel and The Fickle Finger of Fate, influenced writers such as Charles Forth. He began contributing articles to, here's where we tie into all the strange stuff, the Flying Saucer Review. And he took up investigating UFOs with assorted Fortania as a full-time pursuit. So John Keel became a full-time UFO investigator in the year 1966. Keel analyzed what he calls windows and waves, or flaps as they are often called, or reported UFO events, concluding that a disproportionate number occurred on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I never knew that. Apparently, more UFO flaps occur on Wednesdays and Saturdays than any other day of the week. Keel was a member of the Screenwriters Guild, and Keel reportedly wrote scripts for Get Smart, The Monkees, Mac and Meyer for Hire, and Lost in Space. Here's something that I found extremely interesting and that I never knew. But in 1967, Keel popularized the term Men in Black in an article from Men's Adventure magazine Saga entitled UFO Agents of Terror. And in that article, by the way, he basically tells the story of the Men in Black from the government, some shadowy government organization that comes to shut people up once they've seen a UFO. It's interesting that he rejected the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This Wikipedia article says that, like contemporary 1960s researchers such as J. Allen Hynek and Jacques Vallée, Keel was initially hopeful he could somehow validate the prevailing extraterrestrial visitation hypothesis. However, after a year of investigations, Keel concluded that extraterrestrial hypothesis was untenable. Indeed, both Hynek and Vallée eventually arrived at a similar conclusion, as Keel himself wrote. Abandoned the extraterrestrial hypothesis in 1967 when my own field investigations disclosed an astonishing overlap between psychic phenomenon and UFOs. The objects and apparitions do not necessarily originate on another planet and may not even exist as permanent constructions of matter. It is more likely that we see what we want to see and interpret such visions according to our own contemporary beliefs. And this leads into the extra-dimensional consciousness aspects of the world of UFOs. Many people believe that UFOs are not physical objects, but rather manifestations of our own consciousness or interpretation of some form of energy, and not really physical structures. In UFO's Operation Trojan Horse, Keel argues that the non-human or spiritual intelligence source has staged whole events over a long period of time in order to propagate and reinforce certain erroneous belief systems. For example, monsters, ghosts, and demons, the fairy faith in Middle Europe, vampire legends, mystery airships in 1897, mystery aeroplanes in the 1930s, mystery helicopters, anomalous creature sightings, poltergeist phenomena, balls of light, and UFOs. Keel conjectured that ultimately all of these anomalies are a cover for the real phenomenon. He used the term, and where have we heard this before, friends? Apparently, he coined this term as well, ultra-terrestrials, to describe UFO occupants he believed to be non-human entities capable of taking on whatever form they want. In Our Haunted Planet, Keel discussed the seldom considered possibility that the alien visitors to Earth are not visitors at all, but an advanced Earth civilization. So we've heard some of these things before, but to me, it was very interesting to see that John Keel has been the genesis of many of this UFO mythology that we have today that is just accepted as very good possibilities. Um, so, not visitors at all, but an advanced Earth civilization, which may or may not be human. Interdimensional life is also considered. And in 1975, of course, he put out his book, The Mothman Prophecies. It was Keel's accounts of his investigation into alleged sightings in and around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, of a huge winged creature called Mothman. The book combines Keel's account of receiving strange phone calls with reports of mutilated pets and culminates with the December 15th, 1967 collapse of the Silver Bridge across the Ohio River. The book was widely popularized as the basis of a 2002 film of the same name starring Richard Gere, Will Patton, Laura Linney, and Alan Bates. And just a note, if you've never seen that Mothman Prophecies movie, it's worth it. It's a good, they veer off from actual history quite a bit. And the main character Richard Gere plays is a combination of Keel and another person. They mentioned that here. Gere and Bates played two parts of Keel's personality. Bates' character was Leek, which was Keel spelled backwards, and Gere's character worked for a newspaper, John Klein, also a play on John Keel's name. It's interesting to note that in June 2002 issue of Skeptical Inquirer, journalist John Sherwood, a former business associate of UFO researcher Gray Barker, published an analysis of private letters between Keel and Barker during the period of Keel's investigation. In the article, Gray Barker's Book of Bunk, Sherwood reported finding significant differences between what Keel wrote at the time of his investigation and what he wrote in his first book about the Mothman reports, raising questions about the book's accuracy. Sherwood also reported that Keel, who is well known for writing humorous and outrageous letters to friends and associates, would not assist him in clarifying the differences. So, controversial figure he was, of course, and it's interesting to see that some of his letters between him and a colleague differ very much from what was put in his eventual book. And Keel lived, of course, on the Upper West Side of New York City. He was a lifelong bachelor, and he died July 3rd, 2009 in New York City at the age of 79. So there we get some insight into the original investigator and really the person who popularized the myth of the Mothman. One second as I find additional source materials here. So after 1966, there was a wave of sightings. And according to most of the reports, Mothman is a black 10-foot tall creature with wings and red eyes. I'm going to share my screen with some images that we found during the course of our research here. One second, friends. Okay, I've got some images here, so we can get some visuals here as to what it is that people are saying. This, of course, is our thumbnail for tonight. Thanks very much, Spooky. A mysterious Mothman creature for our series, Enduring Mysteries. You're watching Truthseekers and our series, Enduring Mysteries, The Mysterious Mothman. So let's get to the creature. And most of the reports from West Virginia and even more modern reports describe it as a man-like creature with arms and legs and also wings. And most people say it's a 10-foot or 12-foot wingspan, which is interesting. I'm not aware of birds with wingspans that big. There are some, but not in that area. So people describe Mothman as a black 10-foot tall creature with wings and red eyes. And shortly after the cemetery incident with the grave robbers that I mentioned, robbers, excuse me, not definitely not grave robbers, slip of the tongue. The grave diggers, who originally were the first witnesses to a Mothman sighting, shortly after that, residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a few miles west of Clendenin, claimed they saw the monster while driving at night. And we heard the article from the newspaper at the time. They reported that the monster was also commonly seen in that TNT area near town. And some of the locals speculated that perhaps people were really seeing cranes or owls, and others would wonder if the creature was created in some sort of mutation accident involving the chemicals associated with storing TNT. Interesting, and we can get into there are some theories about what Mothman actually is. Now, we mentioned that some people believe that the Mothman is a misidentified animal. I find this to be a little bit of a stretch because I've seen an owl at night. But one thing I will say is, if you shine a flashlight at some birds or animals in the forest, you're going to see glowing red eyes. So that's interesting. But for someone to mistake a common barn owl or any owl for a man-like creature with legs and arms and wings, it's a little too much. Interestingly, some people depict Mothman as more reptile-like or demonic, I would even say. Others depict him as more bird-like with feathers and wings. And here we see a more, I suppose, demonic or lizard-like explanation. And some, of course, depict him looking a lot more bird-like than man-like. So the reports vary, but most of the reports that I've been able to find and source, they say it's a 10-foot tall man-like creature with wings on his back. And here we see Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where they have a Mothman celebration every year. Interesting to note that Point Pleasant, West Virginia became a lot like Roswell. You know how Roswell sort of cashed in and said, hey, a lot of people want to come here and hear about Roswell and the Roswell crash. So let's have a museum. Let's have some diners or, themed restaurants about aliens in Roswell. Point Pleasant is exactly like that. It's a sleepy small town who they don't got much going on. So every year, though, they host the Point Pleasant Mothman Festival. And here we see a depiction. This is an interesting statue that was erected right in the town square. And I have the inscription is interesting from that statue. It says, Legend of the Mothman. On a chilly fall night in November 1966, two young couples drove into the TNT area north of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, when they realized they were not alone. What they saw that night has evolved into one of the great mysteries of all time. Hence, the Mothman legacy began. It has grown into a phenomenon known all over the world by millions of curious people asking questions. What really happened? What did these people see? Has it been seen since? It still sparks the world's curiosity. The mystery behind Point Pleasant, West Virginia's Mothman. And this sculpture is by artist and sculptor Bob Roach of New Haven, West Virginia. Here we can see another sort of shadowy, scary depiction here of the Mothman, and a better look at that. It's amazing, actually, sculpture right in the middle of town square, basically Point Pleasant, downtown Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And here we see an owl, and many people believe that what these people were seeing was just a big owl. I find that to be a stretch. And also other people have theorized that it may be a crane or heron, which is a large bird with a 10-foot wingspan. Now, these are possibilities, but I find them to be a little bit of a stretch. So one second, we'll move on to some other materials that I have here to share with you. I'm going to put up my fair use banner because so throughout this, most of these sightings that I've read the sightings reports of, it's 1966, 1967, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And they sort of reach a a fever point. There becomes more and more sightings as the media reports and the newspaper articles sort of, I believe, fan the flames of people. And it really became a phenomenon in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966, 1967. People were scared to go out at night. Parents would tell their children, be careful, the Mothman will get you if you stay out too late. It really did become sort of a big thing in the town for people to go looking. People would get in their cars and go to that TNT area with flashlights and go looking for the Mothman. So I believe that the media heightened people's awareness and more people began looking for the Mothman. And it's not surprising that many more people began to see or have a sighting of the Mothman. But after the collapse of the bridge, the sightings sort of were gone. It's as if Mothman disappeared. And many people at the time commented that Mothman had flown away, or that Mothman was specifically there at that time and that place to warn them of the impending doom of the Mothman, to warn them of the impending doom of the bridge. Once the bridge had collapsed, some people thought Mothman's mission in this sleepy small town in West Virginia had concluded and he had moved on to other places, because the sightings virtually stopped for many years. But there have been sporadic sightings of Mothman in that area every so often up until modern times. And right now in modern times, there are still Mothman sightings in that area. I'm going to put my fair use banner up here. We have a local news report of a Mothman sighting to share, and the pictures from that are extremely interesting. So we want to make sure that we share that with our audience here. I want to remind everybody that we're going to be sharing a video, but this is a transformative work. We're educating the public. We'll be critiquing and discussing the video we're sharing. And this, of course, is covered under fair use and allowable by law. So let me see here if we can't share this local news report. By the way, I like sharing local news reports because generally they're okay with fair use. And I want to thank them in advance for that. Sometimes you need to share material, and this local news story really gives us a perspective into the more recent sightings. I was surprised to find that there have been, especially in the past few years, a bunch of new sightings of Mothman, and there are good, credible people that are seeing these things. They're not whack jobs. All right, let me share my screen here. Let me try that one more time. Yeah, almost did it. Okay, and this is a local news report.
Hunters in Mason County may need to be on the lookout for something other than deer when they hit the woods this week. Eyewitness News reporter Fallon Pearson shows us what else may be lurking out there too.
Up until Sunday night, he hadn't been spotted recently, but according to these pictures, the legendary Point Pleasant Mothman is back. These pictures
Now here is this picture, which is an incredible picture, because if we see legs, we definitely see legs, we definitely see a head of some sort, and we definitely see wings. But there's a counter theory to these pictures, and we'll talk about that after this news report.
Supposedly taken by a man who says he was driving along State Highway 2 in Point Pleasant, saw something jump from tree to tree. So he pulled off the road to take these pictures. The man declined an on-camera interview, but is adamant the pictures are real. And some locals like Carolyn Harris believe it.
It's interesting to note that the person that distributed these photographs remained anonymous and to this day remains anonymous. So that gives me some pause as to the authenticity of the pictures. If I can't interview the guy who took the pictures and get a sense of his his integrity, his truthfulness, it gives me a little bit of caution about the pictures.
fact.
I definitely know that the Mothman's real.
Harris has owned the Mothman Diner for 48 years. She also helped start the Mothman Festival. Harris said there's been too many sightings of the Mothman for her not to believe.
First responders and the church department and stuff that I talked to, that they definitely made a believer out of me.
Harris has met many Mothman believers over the years, like the Smiths.
You have eyewitnesses, so you know, yeah, it does have potential, and I do sort of want to believe.
We asked the local Mothman expert and owner of the Mothman Museum, Jeff Wamsley, just how authentic the pictures are. Wamsley said, with modern technology, it's almost impossible to know for sure if the pics are real. But even if they are fakes, the benefits of the Mothman's legend to the town of Point Pleasant are very real.
It's a good thing. A lot of people, brings a lot of people to the area. It's here to stay. It ain't leaving.
Yeah, it's interesting. The locals love Mothman there. If you go down there, you'll see they're excited about Mothman. They love Mothman because this woman has this little tiny diner in the middle of the town. And most of her business, I would say, or no, in fairness, I'd say 50% of her business was tourists who come in, look at the Mothman statue, go to that Mothman museum, and they have lunch or dinner or breakfast here in her facility. So she's got twice the business that she would have from the locals from the Mothman.
Fallon Pearson, Eyewitness News.
Okay, so I'm going to back that up a little bit here so we can keep a picture here of these pictures. Now, at first, when I saw these pictures, I was convinced this has got to be a flying man, right? This has got to be some kind of Mothman. I mean, look here, we've got legs. You could see a head on this thing. You could see the wings, and it's flying in the sky as they take the pictures. However, a biologist of all things, or I'm sorry, a veterinary biologist, you'll have to excuse me, an animal expert, let's say it that way, an expert on animals once chimed in on these photos, claiming that what this was an owl with a snake in its claws. And that gave me some doubts, because if you look at it again, after being told that is an owl with a snake in its claws, then that kills the legs, right? Because the claws might be here or here, and then the rest is a snake that is dangling in its claws as it's flying to someplace safe to have its meal. Still, I think these pictures are compelling. I'd love to get copies of the original negatives, have them blown up, and or copies of the original digital photos. We don't know how they were taken, whether they were taken with a film camera, digital camera, what. I would like to get original copies so that we could get the very best source material, and then look through, maybe enhance the images and see what it is that I want to see in more detail. And I'm pretty sure if we had good source copied originals, we would be able to see a lot more detail of these photos. Because here it's sort of a black gob in the sky. Yeah, it resembles a bird, and it looks like legs, but are they legs, or is it a dangling snake in the claws of a bird of prey? There are hawks, there are chicken hawks and turkey vultures and owls and eagles and other things that will swoop down, grab a snake, and fly off. So I think the snake explanation definitely holds some validity to me. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the live chat. Is this a picture of a real Mothman, or is this a bird flying with a snake in its claws? What do you think? Oh, and I want to take a moment to thank our kind and generous benefactor, Shadow Zone Productions, who sent a $1.49 super sticker. Very kind and generous of you. We're a viewer-supported show, so we appreciate each and every super chat we get. We read every single one. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. Shadow Zone Productions. Yeah, so what else do I have for you? We could talk about the explanations. What is this thing? People have theories. There are some prevailing theories about what Mothman actually is. We're going to go back to our at first, before we get into the possibilities here, I want to read one of the witness reports I found because I found it very compelling. So again, we're going to cite fair use. I'm sharing my screen here. This is an anonymous report. Many people who report Mothman choose to remain anonymous. I guess they're afraid of getting ridiculed, just like UFO witnesses. Who knows? But this location was in Woodstock, Illinois, and I found an inordinate, I would say, amount of Mothman sightings in the Midwest. But this one came from Woodstock, Illinois, and it was reported to Singular Fortean by Lon Strickler. And the witness said, he said that he thought it may have been Bigfoot initially, but then noticed that it had a large set of membrane wings attached to the back, extending over the top of his head. He described the shape of the wings as that of a gargoyle. The body was 8 to 9 feet in height and covered in dark fur. The arms and legs were well defined. And in this sighting, people believe that they got footprints. Now, I went looking and I found a few examples of when people claim they got Mothman footprints, kind of like the Bigfoot, and people will cast them. But to me, they seem like pareola. Is that what it's called? Like when you look at a cloud and you see something in a cloud. I think some of these so-called footprint evidence is very, very weak. But on to possible explanations. Now, I do recall that the History Channel tested the owl hypothesis, and I don't really recall, but so the first explanation that many people come up with is that these are misidentified animals. And again, I've shined a flashlight in the woods at night and saw glowing red eyes. Sometimes it was a deer, sometimes it was an owl. So the glowing red eyes, to me, is supportive of the theory that these could be misidentified animals. Let me stop for a moment to thank Lon Strickler for a kind and generous $5 super sticker. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. It goes a long way to keeping us producing this content. We're a viewer-supported show. So if you would like to help, there is a money button down there. You can hit it and throw a couple of bucks in our hat and keep us producing this this content and this show. Thank you, Lon Strickler, continuing supporter, for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. So on to the explanations, friends. Theories. I don't want to call them explanations. I want to call these theories. So the first theory, of course, is misidentified animals. Are these mysterious sightings of bird-like men just people seeing an owl? Now, I once had a huge owl fly right by me in the woods, and it was a frightening encounter, I have to say. I was terrified because it came out of nowhere. It was the middle of the night, and all of a sudden there's this big winged creature that flew by me, and it sort of flew in front of me, then over me, and I was terrified. But I knew right away it was a bird, a big bird. Turned out to be an owl. And it's interesting, how many people have, maybe people can agree with me on this point, how many of you have been in the woods and heard whoos, but you never see the owl? So owls tend to be, I almost believe that some people could see a big owl fly near them and mistake it for something more, because it's a rare occurrence to even see an owl. I spend a lot of time in the forest. I hear hooing from owls all the time. I rarely see the owl creating that hooing, but I hear the hoos, right? All the time I hear hoos at the cabin. Sometimes we put a flashlight up in the trees trying to find it, especially if it feels like that it's close, that hooing's real loud. One time we were sitting by the campfire and it was one of these owls would drive me nuts, hoo, hoo, hoo. And we're trying to listen to music and it's blaring, it's who. So we went looking for it, couldn't find it. Eventually, it stopped when we started shining flashlights around. But I think the animal explanation, at least for some of the sightings, may be a valid theory, because you don't see an owl very often. You hear them all the time. I remember even in the city in Philadelphia, you would hear owls, and you're in the middle of a city. Where the hell is an owl? You never see an owl. I've never seen an owl in the city, only in the woods. And I saw one time in a barn too, as well, when I was a kid. But in my entire life, only twice have I been at all close to, maybe 3 times, but once was in a zoo where there was a zookeeper with an owl teaching us about owls. So only 3 times in my life have I been close to an owl. So maybe people who, are not used to seeing owls up close just see this huge winged creature flying over them with a big wingspan, and they get confused. They think it's something more. Now, the animal explanation to me could explain some, but not all of these sightings, because some of these reports, people are adamant. This thing walked on 2 legs. It landed in front of me. It walked on 2 legs right in front of me. It had arms and legs like a person. Those reports are hard to explain away with cranes or with owls, even huge owls. But the other theories, really pick your poison, I guess, right? Pick your preference, I should say. People who are into UFOs and aliens that I've talked to are sure that Mothman is an alien. They know it as a fact. It's a fact. Mothman's an alien. He's an alien from another planet where they have wings and they descended. I had somebody tell me this. I'm just repeating what I've heard. I don't know. So a friend, or maybe colleague of mine who runs a podcast on aliens and UFOs, he's convinced that Mothman is indeed an alien from a planet where, instead of the intelligent species ruling the planet, evolving from apes, on the Mothman planet, the prevailing intelligent species evolved from birds. Okay, that's one of the theories, that it's an alien. We talked about misidentified animals, and again, some people claim that the Mothman is confused with a barred owl. I had to look this up. A shitepoke, Shitepoke, which is a heron, a big bird. People think that maybe people are confusing a barred owl, a shitepoke, which is a heron, a big bird, you can look it up, or a sandhill crane, which we showed earlier. I am less than convinced that this could be at least all the reports. You can't explain away all these reports. People are adamant. I saw legs. I saw arms. This was not a bird. It was 8 feet tall. I was standing in one report I saw. Somebody said I was standing near it. I'm 6 foot, and this thing towered over me by 2, 3, maybe 4 feet. Could have been 10 feet tall, this guy said. That sort of eliminates the barnyard owl or barred owl explanation. Now, I wanted to really dig deep into the possible, the theories as to what Mothman was. So, of course, I dug deep into John Keel's book. And John Keel doesn't make absolutist statements. Like, he doesn't say, I'm convinced it's this. He speculates, but in his book, it really appears to me that John Keel believed that this was some sort of interdimensional being, that it was somehow transported into our physical realm from another dimension. That was his belief. And John Keel has spent more time probably investigating Mothman than most other people. After all, he was the originator of the story. John Keel believed that it was some sort of interdimensional being, but that it was related to the phenomenon of ghosts, demons, spirits, and UFOs in some way. That's an interesting theory. And again, the people who are on the side of this as an interdimensional being, most of them believe that this thing is some sort of harbinger of doom. We talked about how people keep seeing Mothman before great tragedies. Before 9/11, people claim to have seen there was Mothman sightings. Before Fukushima, before the meltdown in Russia, in that area, there were Mothman sightings. And I mean, these are on the record. There were sightings of the Mothman before those terrible events happen. So, could the Mothman be some sort of interdimensional being trying to warn us about impending doom? Why is the Mothman sighted so many times before great tragedies? It's one of those tantalizing little aspects of the Mothman story that really make you think and make you wonder, what could it be? And but to me, I don't understand if it's trying to warn us, why it doesn't just swoop down and talk to us and say, "Hey, maybe you better shore up that bridge because its structure is terrible and it's going to collapse." We don't get that. We just get sightings of Mothman. Now, an interesting point also of people who are seeing Mothman that I really want to stress is that many of the sightings, people report having these strange emotional waves come over them. Now, certainly, if you're going to see something otherworldly like this, you're going to be afraid. But many people have reported some sort of emotional feeling of impending doom and gloom after the sighting that lasts like an emotional hangover for weeks after their sightings. So, could it be that this creature can somehow project emotions into people? Just another strange part of the story. So finally, I talked to a theologian who looked over some of the reports and the pictures for me, and this is why some of this stuff is very interesting to me, because we talked about how my friend, who is a big believer in UFOs and aliens, is convinced that Mothman is an alien from a planet inhabited by bird people. John Keel and others believe it's some sort of interdimensional being with some sort of connection to ghosts, spirits, etc. The theologian that I spoke to, he's a Catholic priest. He told me that's a demon. That's absolutely a demon. And I said, well, I thought demons didn't have bodies. And, no, a demon can appear in whatever form it wishes. But this is a demon. The leathery wings, people describe it as being gargoyle-like. That's a fallen angel. That's a demon. And I try to press this priest for, okay, but why is a demon just like flying around people and scaring them? And he didn't really have an answer. But he was convinced that Mothman is a demon. And there are also reports from John Keel. John Keel had strange phenomenon surrounding him during the entire time he was investigating Mothman. John Keel was getting strange phone calls with robotic voices warning him of things. And there is also this strange connection to something called Indrid Cold. But I think that a lot of people have conflated both those two separate things. Let's take a look, though, because that's worthy of Indrid Cold. Indrid Cold, commonly known as the Smiling Man, is an allegedly humanoid entity. His name comes from his tendency to smile at those who encounter. It is said that he still visits West Virginia to this day. So here is another strange thing. And again, Indrid Cold. I'm going to share my screen so that let me stop that one. I'm going to share my screen once again. Another phenomenon, strange phenomenon coming out of West Virginia. And some people conflate these two paranormal things, Mothman and Indrid Cold, because they come from the same place. And some people have seen both, which is crazy to me, but okay. So the Indrid Cold was first seen October 16, 1966, when two boys, Martin Mouse Munov and James Jimmy Yanchevitz in New Jersey, were walking on 4th Street when they saw a surreal figure standing near the fence. As they walked closer, the figure was a tall, bald man wearing a metal green suit who was staring right at them with a huge grin. The idiosyncratic man chased them until they got away from him. UFO sightings were also reported around the area. And there are more sightings of this strange Indrid Cold. And apparently, John Keel also investigated this, and this, he believed, some of the phone calls, the strange phone calls that he was getting, was from Indrid Cold, this strange, mysterious man. The explanations for Indrid Cold is it's commonly believed that Indrid may be an alien entity and is supported by its close connection with UFO activity and with Derenberger's sighting. It is also said by Derenberger that the grinning man is in fact a species of aliens with multiple grinning men, although it is unlikely unless the aliens are shapeshifters, because it would be almost impossible for a race to take the exact evolutionary path as us. However, the third sighting by the Lilly family suggests instead it may be a ghost or a spirit. So just another weird, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was sharing that so small. Just another weird part of the story. And sometimes, and in the movie Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere, they mix these two. And in the movie, somehow this Indrid Cold alien entity is the person calling John Keel. I don't believe that that may be accurate according to John Keel's book, but it is what it is. Just another strange part of the Mothman story is that right in the same area, we have this UFO flap. And then people are seeing this grinning, strange man, right? And people reported phone calls from this Indrid Cold. There's people just say, this strange man starts calling me. I ask who it is. He says his name is Indrid Cold. Weird part of the story. I'm back to my notes here. So I talked about the possible explanations for what Mothman is, and I find it very interesting that what Mothman is depends on who you ask. If you ask a big believer in aliens and UFOs, Mothman is for sure an alien. I asked a priest to look over some of the sighting reports and the pictures and the depictions, the drawn depictions. The priest was sure this was a demon. If you ask somebody who is an expert on animals or wildlife, most of them say this is all just a misidentified animal. So interesting. Now, about the physical characteristics, most of the reports indicate that Mothman is between 6 and 10 feet tall, with a 10-foot plus size wingspan. It's been compared to a big owl man, a pterosaur, and a Batman. Some people describe saying a Batman, a man with bat wings. Now, on eye color, it's interesting because Mothman has most often been reported with glowing red eyes, but there's also been reports with green eyes, yellow eyes, orange eyes. All have been reported. Probably all the colors have been reported too, but most of the reports cite glowing red eyes. Other reported features of the Mothman in various sightings. Some say it's covered in fur. Some say there's no fur, it was leather-like skin. Others say that it had bat wings. Others say, no, it was definitely bird wings. Some people cite that the creature is covered in gray feathers. So I suppose the reports vary. Now, there could be a lot of different explanations for that. Maybe some people see it far away and they're mistaking fur for feathers or leather-like skin. I don't know, but I find it interesting that the reports, though similar, many of the reports are very, very similar. There are significant differences in a lot of these reports. So it's hard to get a definitive answer. What does Mothman look like? It depends on who sees him and what the witness says, really. And again, animal experts say sometimes confused with barred owl, sandhook crane, and others. Now, we mentioned John Keel, the original investigator and author of the Mothman Prophecies. It's a great book. If you're looking for a great book, John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, is one of those books you get, and it gets good in the beginning, and then it just keeps getting better. It reads almost like a spy thriller, and you can't put it down. I recommend that book, and I recommend the movie. So what is it? What do you guys think in the live chat? Let me know in the comments. Which experts are right? because the UFO experts and alien experts swear it's an alien. Some ghost people I've talked to, they swear it's an interdimensional being, like a ghost or, a demon. Animal experts, again, claim it's misidentified animals. What do you think Mothman is? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comments. I wanted to do one more thing. We've shown you most of what I have for you, but I wanted to again show you. One second here. There have been very recent sightings in Chicago, of all places, and I've got an article from Vice. Again, this is fair use. This is a transformative work. We will be discussing the article that we're sharing, which we're using to educate the public. We'll be critiquing and discussing it. This is an article from Vice titled "People Keep Seeing the Mothman in Chicago." There have been a wave of new sightings of Mothman recently in the city of Chicago. So the Vice article states it was a normal summer night for John Amatrano working a Friday shift as security for Chicago's popular Logan Square hangout, The Owl. I find it interesting that he's hanging out at a place called The Owl and then he sees a Mothman, but, synchronicity. But when he went outside, he saw something odd. I saw a plane flying, but also something moving really awkwardly under it, he told Vice. It didn't look like a bat so much as what the illustrations of pterodactyl look like, with the slenderness of its head and its wing shape. I know what birds and what bats look like. This thing didn't have any feathers or fur, and it didn't fly like anything I've ever seen. Amatrano added that the thing he saw, which according to him had muscular legs, a jutting tailbone, and a human-like shape, flew in a strange swooping motion, undulating up and down. After it flew away, he retrieved his phone from charging in the bar and texted his girlfriend and close friends what had happened. I remember thinking, this was the worst time in the world to have my phone charging, he laughed. So yeah, unfortunately, he didn't get any photographs. What Amatrano saw that night was one of the 55, we have 55 reported Chicago area sightings of a flying humanoid in 2007. I did some checking, and in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, we have less reports, but there are still reports of a flying winged man in Chicago today. Accounts have varied from a large black bat-like being with glowing red eyes to a big owl or something that resembles a Gothic gargoyle or a Mothman. Most eyewitnesses spotted the being in flight, but some particularly disturbing reports detailed it dropping onto hoods of cars, peering in through windows, and swooping down by bystanders. The alleged Mothman has captured the attention of the city from local media articles and rap songs. People are making rap songs about this thing, to Halloween costumes and countless speculative Facebook groups. Amatrano later remembered seeing something on Facebook about the sightings, and as he read more about it, contacted Lon Strickler, a self-described Fortean researcher who's been compiling all of the Chicago sightings on his website. And somebody mentioned Lon Strickler to me, and yeah, I'm going to reach out to him and see if we can't get an interview because he's been looking into these sightings firsthand. I'd love to talk to him. He's got a website, Phantoms and Monsters. Strickler, whose book Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's Winged Humanoids was released last month, has been investigating paranormal sightings since the late 1970s and claims to have seen a Mothman and Bigfoot. Since the rash of sightings starting in February, he's been painstakingly interviewing witnesses and documenting their accounts. According to Strickler, these Chicago sightings are unlike anything he's seen in his decades investigating alleged flying humanoid sightings. This group of sightings is historical, he said, in cryptozoological terms. For one, it's happening in an urban area for the most part, and there are so many sightings in one period. He added that he believes there are at least 3 flying humanoids around Chicago due to the varied locations, the concentrations of sightings in certain neighborhoods, and the small differences in eyewitness testimonies. So this is pretty interesting because it appears that this expert, who's been interviewing witnesses, he doesn't think there's a Mothman, he thinks there's Mothmen. 3 of them. The main reference point Strickler uses for explaining this phenomenon was the wave of reported Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia from 1966 to 1967. There were several reports of a large bird-like man with glowing red eyes. Yeah, so Strickler doesn't believe, however, that Chicagoans have been seeing are harbingers of bad things to come. These beings are less aggressive than the one in Point Pleasant for the most part. I believe overall there was only one thing in Point Pleasant area that was seen during that period. While he's not sure why Chicagoans are seeing what they're seeing, he theorized, I think they're flesh and blood beings that aren't of this world. So interesting, friends, the sightings continue. We have not just sightings back in the 60s, but we have sightings more recently in Chicago. And I've found references to Mothman sightings in other areas of Illinois, especially, and other places throughout the country. It's a pretty common occurrence, and it's strange to me that there's so many common occurrences of sightings of flying winged men. But this is where we're at in this strange world, and this is where we find ourselves. The story of the Mothman has fascinated me since I first heard it, and I'm happy to bring you some history and perspective into this enduring mystery tonight. So, friends, I'm going to take a short musical break here, and we are going to read all of the super chats when we come back, and we'll take comments and questions from the live chat. I will be devoting my full and total attention to the live chat. So we'll be right back, friends.
What you need, in finding what you see, I'm hiding all that I'm really made of. No matter what you see, no one's watching me, at least no one that I'm afraid of. So much about me is wrong, despite of all you keep, despite of all you free, I know that you'll be right at my side, love. I've left no one to call, hurting softly now, the harder you'll fall. So much about me is wrong, as I avoid your plea, serving with your tea, you'll wonder just when I've had enough. Don't wait too long, yeah, I'm not as distant as I may have appeared. So much about me is wrong.
Greetings and salutations, friends. You're watching Truthseekers, and we're continuing our new series, Enduring Mysteries. Tonight, we're talking about the mysterious Mothman, and it is one of my favorite of conspiracy land stories. I suppose I have followed it since I first heard about it in the it would have been in the mid 1990s, I suppose, when I first got John Keel's book, Mothman Prophecies. So we're going to be taking comments, questions, and suggestions for new shows from the live chat. But let me take a moment to remind you that we're a viewer-supported show. There's a few ways that you could support our show here. The first is to join us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You get some additional content as sort of backstage pass into the things going on in the show. We do a monthly show journal, as well as also my music goes to Patreon before it becomes public. So you sort of get a sneak peek at many of the things that I'm working on. Another way to support us is those super chats, the money button down there in the live chat. That's a great way to throw a couple of bucks in our hat and keep us producing this content. And finally, the super chats work during the live broadcast, but you can always send a PayPal donation. The instructions to do that are in the description of the video here. Just be sure to add a note and give us your chat room user ID and anything you'd like us to shout out, and we'll do that. Now, I believe we've already read the super chats, but I'm going to check in with them just the same, and make sure that everybody is aware and knows that some shows don't even read the super chats, which I was always surprised by. We read every single super chat here. So tonight we had two, one from Lon Strickler, with a super chat purchase. Thank you, Lon Strickler. Oh, it's Lon Strickler is here. Jeez. Somebody just sent me your phone number, your cell phone number, Lon Strickler. And if it's okay with you, I'll be giving you a call. And Shadow Zone Productions with the kind and generous super chat donation. Throwing a couple of bucks in the hat. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize the name when I first saw the super chat, Mr. Strickler, but I'd be sure happy to talk to you. That's a weird thing, right? So we read every single super chat. Now we'll just be dedicating the rest of the show's attention to the live chat. So comments, questions, suggestions for me, please do. Sixth Sense is reminding everybody, please use caps for comments, questions, and suggestions. I happen to be visually impaired, and the comments in all caps really does help me to know that that's a comment you want me to like a question you want me to answer, a comment you want me to share with the rest of the audience. We have Al Warrior is here saying, good evening, guys. Good to see Al Warrior here. Okay, Dave TV says, isn't the Montauk monster in the same general area as Mothman? Well, Montauk was in New York, and West Virginia is pretty far distance from New York State, so I'm not sure that those two things are connected. But yeah, and Victor Caliero is here mentioning, I still remember the movie about the Mothman with Richard Gere. I think it was a great movie. I think they did a great job, and of course Hollywood over-dramatizes things, but it's a movie. They have to. Historically, they got a few things wrong, but I think it really tells a compelling story of what it was like and what happened at the time, and the people that were investigating it, looking into it, and how it affected this strange small town in West Virginia, sleepy small town in West Virginia, not a big place. Here we go. And that's a theory too, that I shouldn't leave out. I kept forgetting to leave that out. Bob Ritter says, have a feeling the Mothman was a result of some weird super soldier experiment. Actually, at the time, some people believed that it may have been an animal that was mutated by chemicals that were in and around this TNT area. So there's another explanation for you. Maybe it was an animal that got, remember like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle? They got oozed with slime, and then they turned into turtle men. Hey, it's a good explanation as any. Maybe there were some strange chemicals in that TNT area that somehow mutated a known animal, somehow mutated a live animal into some kind of man-bird creature. Who knows? Dan Hogan, Truthseekers' new episode, Enduring Mysteries number 3, oven-fired pizza that Dan never gets from Cambion. That's a huge mystery to me. Well, you got to visit the cabin. I'll fire up the wood stove if you ever make it there. And remember, I do have a Dan. I do have a trailer next to the cabin that sleeps two, but I got to fix the door on it. The door basically fell apart from weather, I guess. And I try to fix it. I got a new door to put on there, but it doesn't fit. I'll fix it before you get there, though. So, yeah. Any more comments or questions for me? Otherwise, we're going to bounce on out of here and call it a quick one tonight. I'm glad that we could. And the Sixth Sense is recognizing that the song played was Jason Paul Elder, his song called Wrong, his studio version of that song. And there is, if you want to hear more Jason Paul Elder songs, there is a great YouTube channel link kindly shared by the Sixth Sense, so you can do that. Homo Trolleus says, Truthseekers, it was the mutagen. Yeah, it quite possibly could be. On the Rise says, good show, Stephen. Well, thank you for your kindness and your support, On the Rise. Good to have you here. That girl, Jessica, late as usual. Yeah, women are always late, you know? That and you make men wait. The two things that annoy me the most about women is that they're always late and they make you wait forever, you know? Now, actually, I don't get upset. I used to get upset, right? Because it takes a man a while to realize that a woman needs 3 hours of showering, pricking, prodding, shaving, hair, makeup, and more to be able to go outside. And we're men, we're slobs. We just, you know, if you're lucky, we take a shower and roll on out. Spooky says, do a show on the Greer Wild Man. Not so sure about that. But yeah, Zach Diecast Man Sewer says Sloth Man, not so up on Sloth Man. Yeah, somebody's asking me for the link to the Discord server. We're going to try to send that. We'll see. Yeah, and I'm getting texts from alien scientists. He's asking me for the link to my Discord server. So, 1 second. Some people, you know, I have to do something for right away before I forget. So just bear with me. I'm going to send alien scientists an invitation, and actually, it's a good opportunity to remind everybody that we have a Discord server. I'm going to put the invitation to the Discord server right in the live chat here. So bear with me. And I'm going to also make sure that we get it over to Alien Scientist, friend of the show. He's looking for it. So, and that somebody again has to show me how to get an invitation for the Discord server that does not expire, because that gets annoying, right? Good opportunity to remind everybody, though, that we have a Discord server. And so if you enjoy the live chat feature here during our live broadcasts, just know that we have a Discord server. So you don't just get to chat with fellow truth seekers during the live broadcasts here. You can go over to our Discord server and chat 24/7. And we have these different, I think it's really coming along. You know, I started it, Spooky fixed it. But we have an introductions channel, we have general channel, we have a channel where you can drop your links, stories and news, cryptozoology, memes, which is, I check the memes first because there's some funny stuff about conspiracy land in there every time I check it. We have UFO and the phenomenon. We have a gaming sub channel, Bob Lazar. There's an Anjali and Grifters by Request. So yeah. And you can use that Discord server 24. Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry about it, Jeremy. I thought I always mean, Jeremy, to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but most of the time I forget. So, you know, if somebody texts me, sometimes I'm worried that it was something going on with the live show, like the sound is out or something's not working. So I always look at it. But yeah, I put the invitation to the Discord right in the live chat, right above you there in the live chat. You'll see it, and I'm gonna send it over to you on Twitter just to be sure that you have it. We'd sure like to have alien scientists on our Discord server. 1 second, let me make sure that I get that over to him. So Discord invite. And I sent Jeremy some information earlier. It would appear that there is a new possibility of what that so-called S4 site. It may actually be a nuclear waste disposal site. But I'm going to try and follow up and get some verification of that. I had sent him a message. I got a message from someone who is an environmental watchdog and fights to expose government waste sites. And he sent me a message that would seem to indicate that that site might be a waste disposal site. But I've got to figure out how we can prove that to be the case or not. So another possibility in the can of worms of that story, right? Yeah. Alien scientist, got it. Good. So we'll have an alien scientist also in the Truthseekers live chat or Truthseekers Discord server. We've got an alien scientist in the live chat now. James Prepper says environmental watchdog. There you go. Yeah, that's James Prepper, who, among other things, interesting character. He is, look him up. He's making a Bible, this amazing Bible. We're trying to get him on here as a guest. And he's also an environmental watchdog, looking into a lot of environmental things. I didn't know how to term you. I'm sorry, James. Whatever title you prefer, I will certainly use in the future. I just meant how you're looking into all these environmental sites, and he looks into polluted sites for the government. He and I were talking about, in my home, in where I live, there is an Air Force base that polluted all the groundwater with chemicals. And they try to cover it up. But thanks to people like environmental watchdogs, they weren't able to. Yeah. Alien scientist says, so they stopped burning all the metal invisibility cloak materials in open burn pits and started burying them in old mine shafts. Got it. Hey, Jeremy, it's a possibility. It's as good a possibility as any, I suppose, right? You never know, right? Chris77 is here and says, I enjoy every show as a delivery driver. It keeps me entertained. Oh, I did that for a while. You need something good to listen to while you're doing that for 8 or 10 hours a day. Yeah. Al Warrior, it's awesome. I'm still trying to learn that. Yeah, some people, it's not as too steep a learning curve. My advice to you is get on over to the Discord server. You'll have a good time interacting with fellow truth seekers, fellow believers, fellow skeptics, all kinds of people that are into these strange and wacky conspiracy land topics. Basically, it's a bunch of weirdos just like you. So if you're a weirdo, and I certainly am, head on over there. And I want to thank a kind viewer. I wore this today. Look, it's my wings shirt from Mothman, right? Somebody sent me a very nice gift package today, a friend of the show, which included this shirt. So thank them very much. They know who they are. Very kind and generous of them. Spooky said, I heard a myth about shirtless Greer Mothman. That's gross. That girl Jessica says, freaks and geeks, my favorite. I always hung out with the freaks and geeks. They're the fun people, that girl Jessica. You know, you don't want to hang out with a bunch of football players and cheerleaders. You want to hang out with the weird ones. That's what I do, right? That's definitely what I do. Yes, and the Sixth Sense is kindly sharing Bob Lazar debunked websites, compliments of alien scientists. A lot of great information there. If you're on the fence about Bob Lazar especially, I encourage you to read that. It might really change your mind. On the Rise says there's a similar concrete cap in the Pacific where they tested the nuke. So there you go. It is a definite possibility that could be, right? One time I've abducted by aliens is here saying we love Cambion and Cambion for president. I don't want to take the pay cut, right? Or I would do it, right? Now, I'd be terrible at politics because I tell people generally what I think, right? And by the way, speaking of telling people what I think, there's been this, Twitter storm of critics, and I'm going to address it, but not tonight. But what I will say about the chorus of critics is that some people are so easily fooled that it's amazing to me. There are nameless, faceless people on Twitter, and you know what I mean. somebody that you don't know who they are, because they get a fake name and a fake profile picture. Usually it's an alien or the anonymous mask. And they want to stir up shit, turn people against me. So, some of this nonsense that's going on, I'm going to address in another show. But what I will tell you is that before you hop on the bandwagon to crucify me, know that the people, a lot of these nameless, faceless Twitter posts are people that I have covered in the past with their sock accounts, trying to turn people against me because they can't argue with the facts or evidence I presented about them, and they get butthurt and they go either make a fake account or they already had a fake account. Why is it only nameless, faceless accounts that do this shit? There's a reason for that, friends. So be careful when you read Twitter posts by nameless, faceless people. My name's out there. My face is out there. And another point I'd like to make about that situation is my DMs are open. If you got a problem with something that I've done, something that I've said, feel free, DM me, talk about it. I talk to anybody. And here's another thing. There's some kind of lack of standards here. Show me a show host that replies as much as I do to people. I reply to almost everybody, as long as you're respectful to me. When you ask me a question or say something to me or disagree with me, I reply. Most other show hosts ignore everybody, especially somebody being critical. I'm open to any conversation, but I have a few rules. The very first rule is no nameless, faceless accounts. If you want to converse with me or have any sort of dialogue or ask me a question, show me your face, show me your name, extend to me the same courtesy I'm extending to you. I need to know who I'm talking about, because at least in a few of these cases, we know for sure, we've got them dead to rights, that it was somebody masquerading as somebody else that want to take shots at me. And we have proof that people have done that. So before you get all butthurt hearing some rumors or somebody spouting nasty nonsense about me, ask yourself this: who is this person? Do I know who they really are? And if you don't know who they really are because they're hiding their name in their face, that is not a good source of information. And they may just have ulterior motives, right? On the rise mentioning, Stephen does respond. We talk daily. I try to communicate with as many people as I possibly can. But at some point, I have to say, I'm not going to communicate with somebody who's hiding their name and their face, right? And in the past, I have, and it's always turned out. In one case, it turned out to be Mikey Horn from the Billy Meyer UFO cult. And we have proof of that. We have absolute proof that Mikey Horn has masqueraded as some nameless, faceless Twitter account and try to stir up trouble and start shit and get people turned against me, because he can't argue with anything I presented about his Billy Meyer nonsense or his UFO cult, right? So what does he do? Well, we've got to go through everything that Stephen Cambion ever said, everything Stephen Cambion ever did, and try to find things that we can use to turn people against him. And that's what he does. And that's what he did. And he does the same thing to Cal Korff. And he did the same thing to Rich from Goofon. Anybody critical of him, he goes on those fake accounts and starts shit. So you have to know that if you don't know who's making these claims or, stirring up this shit, trying to stir the shit pot and get people turned against me, they may have an ulterior motive. Really? Really? You were so incensed by a guest I had that you don't think I asked this question or that question to, that you're going to take to Twitter and call me a fraud or some nonsense? Bullshit. Nobody is that incensed, that upset, that, I have such righteous indignation because Stephen Cambion had a guest I don't like that I'm going to take to Twitter and tell everybody that he's a fraud. It's bullshit, friends. It's bullshit. And you're stupid if you believe a nameless, faceless person, right? And I'll tell my side of these stories because it's nothing burger nonsense. And a final point I would like to make is that I've been doing a show in one form or another for 6 or going on 7 years now. And if you combine all of the content that I have created, we've passed 400 live shows here. There's 1,000 hours of Truthseekers, 1,000 hours. So if you're that intent on getting people to dislike me or not watch my show anymore or turn people against me, you've got 1,000 hours of content that you could sit through and try to find something I said, something I did, some guest you didn't like, some guest you don't think I asked enough hard questions to try to attack me with. Nobody that is launching these attacks has 1,000 hours of content that I can look through. So it's easy to judge somebody until you've walked a mile in their shoes. Am I going to have guests that some people don't like? Goddamn right I am. I have, right? And especially a few of them. Whoo, boy. There are a few guests that I've had that I've gotten viciously attacked for 6 months because I dared to have that guest. And what was the issue? The issue was the guest that I had was exposing a nefarious UFO cult for being frauds, liars, and money-grubbing whores, right? And all that guy's evidence was absolutely impeccable. Nobody could argue with that guy's evidence. So what do? Well, we're gonna send 25 or 50 fake accounts to constantly email you 24/7 for 6 months, telling you what an asshole that guy is, right? And I have to take those slings and arrows because I made the decision to have that guest. And by the way, I stand by that guest's research and everything they said about that UFO cult. My point is that nameless, faceless people on the internet, you certainly can't trust. My name is out there. My face is out there. If you have a question, DM me, right? And I will answer as long as you're respectful. But starting Twitter threads about what a fraud I am. And here's another issue. He exposes other people, but then he has this fraud or that fraud. Well, that's your opinion, and we are certainly going to have controversial figures here. Everybody involved in these strange topics is somewhat controversial. And another thing I love is that ask any show host. You cannot possibly know everything that a guest of yours ever said for their entire life and their entire history. And some of these clowns go back to something somebody said 20 years ago and go, see, I didn't know he said that 20 years ago. That guest wasn't here to talk about what he said 20 years ago. He was here to talk about his book, which I happen to like. So sorry, not sorry I hosted him. And the other thing is, these people are going to attack me for having certain guests. It's so stupid. Listen, I've said it 100 times. Ask any show host. What they are trying to imply is that if any show host, including me, hosts a guest, then that means that that show host agrees 100% with that guest. Not only with 100% agrees with the guest, but agrees 100% that everything the guest has ever said has been truthful, honest, morally okay, and responsible, or whatever. To imply that a show host agrees 100% with everything a guest has ever said is childish, stupid, and ridiculous. But this is what these people have to imply because some guy said something 20 years ago, right? It's so stupid, silly nonsense, childish. What are you, in grade school? Don't hang out with him. He hangs out with the stinky kid. It's so childish and nonsensical. And again, my policy is if you're a nameless, faceless person on the internet, I'm not talking to you. Do me the same respect that I give you. Here's my name. Here's my face. I've given people my cell phone. My cell phone number's out there. I get strange, weird calls once in a while from somebody that wants to be a guest or something. I'm an open book. But to imply that you're going to be, he had this other show host on and that guy's a fraud. And again, no proof that guy's a fraud, but just, he had that show host on his show, so he can't be trusted. Attack my research. Attack the facts and evidence I bring. They never do. They never do. They never once has somebody attacked the facts, the evidence, and the research that I bring to these stories. They attack me personally. They call me a fraud because I had some guest they don't like, or they call me a fraud for some reason. He had that guest, so he has no right to speak on these other frauds because he had this other guest that I think said something that wasn't right or factual 20 years ago. It's nonsensical. It's garbage. Yeah, Glitch Loop says these people aren't researchers, more like counterintelligence and frauds. Yeah, why is it always nameless, faceless accounts with alien pictures, right? Or the anonymous mask, the Guy Fawkes mask? Every one of them, right? But the problem is that then normal people see these posts and they don't know better. They don't realize that there may be an ulterior motive for somebody to put a mask on the internet and talk shit on me. And if you're dumb enough to believe in nameless, faceless, I'm right here. My name's out there. My face is out there. I'm who I am. Who is that person that's saying this shit? Do you even know who that is? Do you know that could be somebody that I exposed as a grifter, con artist, fraudster that's trying to get back at me? Is that so out there to believe that that's a possibility here? Of course not. But some of these people, it's this herd mentality. Right? They're like sheeple, right? Oh, this guy said it must be true. Damn, Steve Campion's exposed all these frauds, liars, con artists, grifters, taking advantage of people for 6 or 7 years now. But he had this one guy on that said something 20 years ago. So Steve Campion must be a bad guy, and we can't trust his research. Nobody attacks the research. Nobody proves that my research is wrong. Nobody so far. They never attack the work that I do here. They attack me as a person or try to paint me as a hypocrite. Good on you. Good luck with that, right? And the other thing is an issue of time. I'm not going to waste time. I used to. Some nameless, faceless guy was like, Steve Campion, your show sucks because you had this guest on, and he said that. I used to argue with them. And then I realized, why am I going to spend hours of my life every week arguing with somebody, and I don't even know who they are, really, right? For all I know, they could be anybody. Why am I going to waste hours of my week every week listening to that? Now, again, the good people that listen to our show know that I'm very approachable. I'm an open book. If you disagree with something, hey, let's have a discussion about it. Why do you disagree with me? Let me hear you out, and I'll tell you what I think. And I'm very open like that. But to just come attacking me with this nonsense, you're not going to get my attention. And see, part of me realized lately that that's what they want. They like that back and forth. There's some loser armchair idiot that thinks they know or thinks they could run a better show. That's another thing. I love it. I love it. Listen, if you don't like my show, first of all, suck a dick. Just get right down on it, though. Get right down on it. Slurp it up, right? Eat that shit. Because I don't care if you don't like it. I do the show for the people that do like it and for myself. And second of all, it's always the guy who won't step in the arena that's going to tell the gladiator what he's doing wrong. I'm here. I show up every day, right? And I've got the blood, sweat, and tears and the passion in this fight. I'm here every day. These armchair assholes that never did anything in their life telling me everything I'm doing wrong is comical. If people don't realize that it's a jealous prick loser living in his mom's basement that's butthurt because I'm doing great. I'm doing great here. We're doing great here. And we continue to do better and better and better. And maybe, just maybe, some of these people are just jealous pricks, right? But people don't consider that. They just hear the shit talking and they want to pile on. And it is what it is, and it's okay. I'm good with it. I am at total peace. We do good work here on the show, and anybody that disagrees, you're free to disagree. But my thing is, go do your own show, right? Go walk a mile, right? Go do an hour show. Go do it once, and then come back here and tell me how shitty I am at doing this. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get an education that I'm walking a hard road here. I'm not always going to make the right decisions. I may veer off into the wrong road. I might hit a crossroads and make the wrong decision. I might flip a coin and say, what's the right thing to do here? And I might pick the wrong path. But I will always be honest with my audience and own up to it. If I make a mistake, I tell you, right? I freely admit I've made some mistakes along this journey. But we have produced more than 1,000 hours of content here. So if you're really looking for something to slag me on, you're going to find it. And you're going to find something to to try to make me look like the bad guy in 1,000 hours of content. But until you have 1,000 hours of content that I could do the same thing with, then this argument is garbage. This is apples and oranges. You can't compare me with somebody that has no work to show the public, right? And isn't it interesting that I've never, ever had a show host doing better than me that will slag my show? Never, not once. It's always somebody that either hasn't done a show and probably wants to and is jealous somehow, or somebody that tried to do a show and failed miserably that comes and attacks me, or, like I said, nameless, faceless, armchair, right-click researchers on Twitter that don't have a show, that aren't out there, right? You go try it, bro. You go be out there in the public for a few hours every day of your life. It ain't easy, bro. And again, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm human, right? To suggest, however, that all of the work that we have done here can be just washed aside as not relevant because I made one mistake, 2 mistakes, 3 mistakes. How many do I get? Especially mistakes that I've owned up to or apologized for. Certainly made mistakes here. And I've apologized for a few of them. I've told my audience the truth. Like, yeah, I made a bad call, right? Or in a few cases, I've said, I've lost my objectivity on them. So I can't, like there's a few people that I just became too friendly with. And I say, I'm not a good judge of their material anymore because I became impartial, right? I lost my objectivity, right? V is here, long time no see, and says, this is true. Cambion has admitted when he has been dead wrong. Yeah, well, that's the mark of a real man. A real man admits when he's wrong and apologizes sincerely for it. And I learned that from my wife. If you're going to live with a woman, you got to learn to say, I'm sorry when you screw up. And I'm a human. I screw up a lot. And it doesn't help too, in my case, V, that my wife is like Mother Teresa. She's like a saint. All the stuff she does for our family and these kids. And I'm always trying to play catch up and not be such a sloucher. Right. But so that's where we're at with this course of critics. I would invite people, if you see somebody posting something and you're unsure, is that true? Did Steve do that? Is Steve a bad guy because he had this guest? DM me on Twitter. Talk to me. Come in my live chat. You can ask. And that's another thing. We don't have an echo chamber here. We have a live chat that does not censor people's views. If somebody disagrees with me, we let them. We let them here. And people can make whatever decision they want to make, though. I'm done trying to defend my integrity. I think you can look at my history and see my integrity. Or let's say my attempt at having integrity, right? I'm still trying to have integrity. This is a tough place to try to be morally and ethically correct as much as possible in, because we can see perfect examples. The people that do the best in this are the liars, the frauds, the con artists. They're the ones that succeed and make all the money. The people who are trying to be honest with the audience, the people who are giving you both sides of the story, both the skeptic side and the believer side, just don't do as well, right? CK Benzona is here. First time commenter. Welcome to the live chat. Glad to see you here and glad that you finally felt comfortable enough to comment. Says, I'm a lurker here, like the content and interaction. Keep rocking the edge of the universe. Thank you for your kindness and your support. We appreciate it. Ryan Evans says, but you badmouth others. You get personal on people when they differ from you. And not really. I try to stick to the facts. Sometimes I get passionate and personal, Ryan. I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to, but I'll try to do better. Brian, I'm trying, right? I said I'm going to try to be kinder, gentler, and more diplomatic. But sometimes the facts are the facts, and sometimes the facts piss me off, and I get emotional. When I think about all the people that some of the people we've covered here are ripping off for money, and many of them have mental problems, many of them are on, SSI, disability, I get angry. I get pissed off. I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress, Ryan. But I recognize my faults. And I recognize that other people see some of my faults, maybe more than I do. It's easy to not see your faults when you're the one faulting, right? But I trust that the audience here has checked me. There's a few people in the live chat that put me in check. And what do I mean? Good people, when you're doing wrong, they'll put you in check and they'll say, you got to stop and think about what you're doing here. It's not right. And I appreciate people like that. I want people like that, right? Pragmagic says, no need to get personal with some. Streamers say a lot of crap off their dome. Doesn't make it absolute. That goes all ways, me included. Yeah, I think Pragmagic's over there having a critiquing Cambion show once in a while. I'm gonna send somebody to beat his ass. No, he's a friend of the show, but I get his point, right? Some shows are just about tearing people down, and mine was and is sometimes. We're here tearing people down, but that is first of all, it's not sustainable, and second of all, it's the low-hanging fruit. And I've said it before, I've said it 100 times. It's easy for me to tell you what I don't believe. It's very difficult for me to share with you what I do believe. Now, these stories that we've shared this week, I believe there's something to these stories, a little more than explanations that they're not extraordinary. Mothman, Bermuda Triangle, and the Chupacabra mystery are great mysteries. I believe there's something to all three of them, more that may be more than natural explanation. Oh no, please, Dan, no more. Well, Dan Hogan, do you want to do a follow-up interview with Angelique now that her timeline is up? No. Oh, and that's another thing people are slagging me for on Twitter, saying that I did some kind of backroom deal with her to get an exclusive interview. First of all, it's absolutely ridiculous that I would go, listen, Angelique, I have all the information about where your alien mountain was, and I'm going to release it all and blow your story out of the water. But before I do that, I'm going to bribe you into giving me an exclusive interview after you show all the proof of the aliens. I get the exclusive first interview, Angelique. The fact that some people believe that that's what happened is ridiculous. She made some offhanded comment on a show that I agreed not to release it, and then maybe she would give me an interview, an exclusive, after she did her expedition. That, and I even say on the clip that people are sharing trashing me, that's not what happened. That's not how I remember it. How I remember it, so let's set the record straight, is I sent her the information that I had found. James Conrad and Charlie Weiser, but they let me in on it because they knew I was working on the story too. I shared with Angelique that we believe that we have located this Wayne, the mountain, and whatever. I sent her the information. She got hysterical. She got very, very emotional. I believe she was crying and everything. So I talked to her about the situation, and she was crying and extremely upset. And I knew she had health problems, so I felt bad that I had caused her to have some kind of emotional. She was like almost having a breakdown from my recollection. And she begged me, please, please, you can't release this because you're going to put Wayne's life in danger and this and that and all these other things. And she's upset and crying. And I felt sympathy for her and I felt empathy for her. So I said, I won't release it. But I warned her that other people had this information and they may release it. Later in the conversation, after she calmed down and whatever, she was very thankful and said, I'm so glad. And, you know, she complimented me on having journalistic integrity, whatever that means. And then said, once I'm finished with the expedition, you can release anything you want, and then I'll give you an exclusive interview. I didn't ask for that. She offered, first of all. I offered to not release any of that information before she offered me anything in return. I say on that clip, this was not a tit for tat. That's not what happened. But people are going to take that clip trying to make me look like I did some kind of big backroom deal. And by the way, that whole thing is ridiculous anyway, because the whole story fell apart. Do people really think that I thought I was going to get an exclusive interview with Anjali and her alien friends if I just kept my mouth shut? And the other issue is that I knew that other people were hot on the trail of this Anjali Wayne's Mountain. I knew people that were this close that I know were blabbermouths and were never going to keep it to themselves. So I thought, there's no harm in me not releasing it because somebody's going to release this in the next couple of weeks. And what happened? 3, maybe 4 different Twitter accounts released the same information that I had that I agreed not to Anjali not to release. 3 or 4 different people the very next week, maybe the week after at the latest, released all the same information. So me withholding it, some people are going to imply that I was withholding information from the community. That's garbage. That's bullshit. I knew it was going to be out there in a few short days or a week or 2 max, and it was. So me withholding that information, it had to do with my sympathy and empathy for an incredibly mentally fragile and upset woman. I decided I didn't want to cause her additional stress or pain or, emotional distress, because I'm telling you, she was so upset over me possibly releasing this information. I felt horrible and said, but I warned her. I said, somebody's going to do it, Anjali. Somebody else is going to put this out there, but I give you my word, I won't put it out until the end of December. That's what happened. Later in the conversation, she calmed down, agreed to, I'll give you an exclusive interview after the expedition where we show the proof of the aliens. And I said, okay. Did I think she was really going to give the proof of the aliens? Not really, right? But it was like, but again, this was not a tit for tat. So there was no backroom deal. There was a conversation, which no one except her and I were in on. So people speculate and making up shit like, okay, whatever. And by the way, that story is completely gone now. So, people want me to interview her again. About what? About she didn't find the proof? And again, listen, I have nothing against her. Nice lady. I wish her the best of success and everything in her life. I hope that she finds peace in whatever she does. I don't have anything against her, but I don't think that there's anything left of a story there. Lee Guy with the kind and generous $9.99 super sticker full of bacon. Someday I'm going to meet Lee Guy and I'm going to give him some pre-cooked bacon. You could get those like bacon snack packs at 7-Eleven. I don't know what Lee Guy's fascination with bacon is, but he's always posting bacon. I love bacon. I love BLTs. I love bacon double cheeseburgers, right? I love bacon sprinkled in salads. I love bacos. What's not to like about bacon, right, Lee Guy? But thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. It means a lot to me. Continuing supporter of the show, Lee Guy. Always throwing a couple bucks in our hat and helping us to succeed. Ryan Evans says, Steve, let the story die. She's done and there is nothing there. I agree with you, Ryan, but I was addressing people slagging me on Twitter saying there was some kind of backroom deal. There wasn't, but people are going to believe whatever they're going to believe. V says, isn't that a fact? Wayne never once has confirmed or alluded to anything alien on his property. It depends. Do you mean the Wayne I found and James A. Conrad and Charlie Weiser found, or the other Wayne that somebody else found, or the Wayne that Anjali says is the real Wayne and those other 2 Waynes aren't the Waynes? We don't have any on the record statement from any Wayne confirming any alien activity on his property. No, V. So, yeah, I think that the story is just not, it fell apart. That girl, Jessica, bacon. There we go. Brock Landers commenting, still, dude, just because you have her on your show in order to share her story does not mean that you believe everything she says or support it. It's a show with someone sharing their experiences. I agree. But somehow these people think that just because I host a guest that I believe everything they say on the show, and I believe everything they say or ever said in their entire lives. It's an attempt to turn people against me. It's childish and stupid. And I agree with you, Brock. I do the best I can here. That's all. I mean, this is all we can do. Ryan Evans says he's into pork, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I really don't know. Archaic Revival says, finishing an incredible walnut-shaped UFO right now, uploading it in an hour or two. I'd like to see that. Make sure you send me that. Always interested in new work. Dan Hogan says Wayne's World. Yeah, we did an homage to Wayne's World on that, right? Al Warrior with a kind and generous $6.66 super chat saying, Lee made me do it, bro. Ha. Well, thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. We certainly appreciate it. Long time live chat participant and supporter of the show, Al Warrior. Always good to see Al Warrior here. Always got something to contribute to the conversation, and occasionally we'll throw a couple of bucks in my hat. Thank you, Al Warrior, for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. It is much, much appreciated. We're gonna get you praise the cash, Al Warrior, if I can find it. There we go. And a station identification. If I happen to play the right one, sometimes I play the wrong one. I gotta write them down. Which one is? Yeah, I think this is it. So thank you, Al Warrior, for helping us to praise the cash, friends.
You're watching Truthseekers. Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you, Al Warrior. Cash praiser extraordinaire, Al Warrior, who is helping us to praise the cash. That girl Jessica with a kind and generous $3.33 Australian. You know, I didn't know until recently that girl Jessica was from Australia. And we'd like to have her on when we do. We're going to do a show on how crazy Australia got over the current health crisis. We got to be careful doing it, but we'd like to have that girl Jessica on the show. So she has an open invitation to come and be a guest. Yeah. Ryan Evans says that scared the hell out of me. How do you think I feel? I got to live with that cash clown. Ryan Evans. That girl Jessica says, no, you're not. I'm Wayne. The Sixth Sense reminding everyone there apparently was multiple Waynes, whatever fit the story. Some innocent soul is probably being harassed as a result of their claims. And that's what they are, claims, no proof whatsoever. Yeah, we've yet to receive any proof whatsoever of Anjali's claims. We haven't been able to interview the other witnesses. We haven't been able to find corroborating evidence to her story, though I was able to verify that her claimed background and credentials were real. She did work for the military. She did work for the United States government, as she said she did. So there's that. Ryan Evans telling me to sell that laugh. I wish I could can it. I think we're going to get little chips that you can put my laugh in and make some kind of laughing doll for people. That would be good. Jesse Singer reminding me, stick to your guns, Steve. Don't pull off the gas because the brothers are on your tail. I think I know what who you're talking about. We'll see. We'll see what happens. You know, I'm in here for the long haul. I'm here for the long game, right? So, you know, I think about that sometimes. Like I think about the long game here. You know, where is the show going to be at in 5 years? Because I'm here to stay. I don't think I'm going anywhere. Right? I love what we do here. I'm continually trying to improve the show, make the show better, and that's kind of where I'm at. You know, and I get there'll be critics. I've done a lot of things in my life where there's always critics. And one thing I've always noticed is there's always a guy that doesn't have his own work to show. That is the big critic, right? The big critic is always the guy who can't do what you're doing. It's never a guy that's doing what you're doing better than you, right? If anything, I've been very blessed in my life in that sometimes I've decided to do things and guys that were doing it better than me saw me or recognized my passion and got me aside and tried to help me. And that's great. When a guy who's doing a bigger show than me gets me aside and says, hey, I like what you're doing. Can I give you some constructive criticism? I am all ears, bro. Yes, you are so much more successful than me. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on how I can improve what I'm doing. But that's not the kind of criticism that you get, right? You get some armchair asshole, right? who never did anything like you're doing that's going to tell you everything you're doing wrong. And you just got to learn to live with it. You just got to learn to live with it, right? Ryan Evans says Steve Kyle is a good guy and well liked. He is a good guy. Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm not disagreeing. Sometimes I get things wrong, right? Maybe outward appearances. You never know. Yeah, and I wish all men a road to redemption, especially if they have drug and alcohol issues. Because, friends, the person somebody is when they're on drugs and alcohol is not the same person they are when they're off those things. So, I have a lot of sympathy and empathy. Got a lot of substance abusers, close friends and family even, and I have my own issues as well. So, I try to be sympathetic and empathetic towards those people. Brock Landers says having the so-called experiencers on the show is definitely entertaining. Maybe have a disclaimer before the show. Yeah, but then I get slagged. We did that once, and then I got slagged for it. Like, oh, he doesn't agree with the guest, then why have him on? Like, they're always going to complain. It's just okay, Yeah. Bryce says, not everyone wants a bigger show, just a better show. Okay, yeah. Well, I'm trying to do both, bigger and better, right? If I don't get bigger, maybe I'll just get better, Bry, and I'll just do this show for the same number of people for the next 5 years, but the show will just get better and better and better. But what I think is when the show gets better and better and better, more people come in. And that's just been my experience so far, right? Cosmic Toast reminding people, some people who have mental illnesses. I think that they're referring to experiencers. Could be, I'm always very cautious when talking to experiencers because I don't want to exploit somebody that may be just suffering from mental illness. You never know what's going to happen, right? We try to do the right thing here, and going forward, that's all I can try to do. I'm not brushing off all criticism, by the way. I'm sure that some people have valid points to make, and I'm here and I'll listen. I'll hear you out, and I'll hear you out. I may disagree with you, I may agree with you, but I'm not one to just ignore all people that have some criticism. But like I said, I especially like the constructive criticism. I especially like people who can't just tell me what I'm doing wrong or how to do it better, but that can show me what I'm doing wrong and how they're doing it better or how they overcame that obstacle, right? Constructive criticism is a great thing. And sometimes it means that somebody cared enough about you to be honest with you. And you need people in your life like that. I call that the booger friend, right? You got to have some booger friends. What's a booger friend? You ever have a booger hanging, right? And you don't know it? And you notice people looking at you a little funny, but nobody says anything. The people that don't say, hey, Steve, get a napkin. You got a booger hanging. Those are the people who don't care about you. The booger friends care about you. The booger friends are the people that will say, come up and let you know you got a booger hanging. That was taught to me by an entertainer friend of mine. He said, have as many booger friends as you can. And I'm like, what? What's a booger friend? It makes sense. Booger friend is somebody that cares enough about you that they don't want to see you embarrass yourself. So they'll take you aside and they'll help you when you need help, right? Dan Hogan says, the problem is with a bigger show, you got to bring in the Griff Squad. Anjali brought over 300 viewers, which is great. But look where that went. Just do the show that you want to do. People will be there. Well, that's what we're doing this week. We're kind of popping off in a different direction, right? We're seeing where this goes. And I'm trying to get back to the roots of the show, Dan, because the roots of the show were supposed to be to explore strange and esoteric and paranormal subjects. Not one strange and esoteric and paranormal subject, but it just organically went in a certain direction. And we covered one sort of subculture of that genre more than we covered all the rest. So now we got to get back to some balance and cover some of the rest of the stuff and not be on one beat, right? Because that beat sucks sometimes, being stuck on the one beat. It's like you're in a subculture of a subculture of a subculture, And how many, how many consumers of a subculture can there really be? The answer is not many. And some people will say, yeah, well, you're trying to grow your 10 or, have a bit. Yeah, we'd like to grow the 10. And we'd like to paint with a little broader strokes here. So that's what we're going to do. I think that's best for the show and its long-term growth. We may take a hit short-term in the numbers because some people are tuning in going, what? He's not talking about aliens tonight? I don't want to see this. And they tune out. And that's okay. Come back when we talk about aliens again. And you're welcome, right? Ryan Evans asked, do you mind if I asked how your eye injury happened, Steve? No, not at all. And it's not anything dramatic. Like I didn't get stabbed or shot in the eye. So I had a friend once, but in his defense, for a while, I was wearing a patch on my eye. And when you wear a patch on your eye, for some reason, everybody thinks you got stabbed in the eye or shot in the eye. So I had a friend, he thought I got stabbed in the eye for like a year before somebody else mentioned what really happened. What happened was I had a brain aneurysm, Ryan Evans, and the brain aneurysm was right behind my eye. So it was sort of in the brain, but in that part of the brain right before the optic nerve in the eye starts. You know what I mean? Like right on the edge of the brain behind the eye. And for those who don't know, a brain aneurysm is like a bubble that forms in the blood vessel. And if it pops, it shoots blood all over your brain and you either stroke out and become probably a vegetable or paralyzed, can't talk, can't walk, or you die instantly. I was very fortunate, Ryan Evans, in that they got to the aneurysm before it burst. It was called an unruptured aneurysm. And unfortunately, I had suffered with this aneurysm, not knowing what was going on, being so sick I couldn't hold down water for 2 weeks, puking, and it was terrible. Finally got into a hospital and they diagnosed it immediately. But by that time, there was an extensive amount of damage to my optic nerve where the aneurysm was. So that caused paralysis. So basically, I have what most people would call a lazy eye or a wonky eye. I'm still able to see. I walked away from that situation, Ryan Evans. I could have stroked out. I could have had an instant stroke. I could have died very easily. So I consider myself still lucky. It sucks, right? I had plans to do acting and all this other things, and it sort of put me on a different path because, that cameras are, I suppose cameras are enough, like, what's the right way to say it? It's just that there's the scrutiny, if you're going to be on film, is so high that having an eye looking one way and not the other way, the right way or something, I did one project where a director hired me and then they didn't know about my eye and they had to do some reshoots. And that made me say, I just don't want to do this because I was embarrassed. It was like, oh, we have to do a reshoot because your one eye's looking this way and your other eye's looking that way. And then he said, why don't you tell me about your eye? Because sometimes without the glasses, you can't really notice, but then it becomes more noticeable as I'm looking around or whatever. Anyway, I had a brain aneurysm. The aneurysm was unruptured. They coiled it, so I'm healthy. They fixed the aneurysm, but unfortunately, the nerve damage caused the paralysis of one of my eyes, which does cause double vision sometimes. And I drive with one eye closed. I drive with a weak eye closed or with a patch. Otherwise, and then I have depth perception problems. But I'm walking around and breathing, Ryan Evans, so I have no complaint. Yes, and the Sixth Sense correctly pointing out a brain aneurysm can cause a significant impact on vision by causing pressure to the optic nerve in the brain. Yeah, and somebody else commenting, don't let it bother you, bro. Well, I don't, but listen, as far as being on screen, I realized doing magic shows I could just wear sunglasses or a patch, and then I went and think about my wonky eye or that it's distracting, because it is distracting. If I didn't have these glasses on, sometimes my eyes would be looking in two different directions. And it looks really wackadoo and creepy and weird. And it's distracting from the show. So for that reason, I chose to I wear the sunglasses, Nobody sees my wonky eye looking one way and my good eye looking the right way. And then I'm not self-conscious about what's my eye doing. I don't have anxiety about it. I don't worry about it. I just do the show and I don't worry about my eye. And interestingly, the sunglasses sort of become a trademark after a while. And you know, all my avatars, my profile pictures are all me like this. And it becomes sort of a trademark. People, you know, they know you as that guy in the sunglasses. You know, once in a while I get a stupid comment because somebody's like, why wearing sunglasses inside, stupid? And then they feel dumb when they realize that I'm handicapped. But it's all good, right? Yes. And On the Rise says the sunglasses is part of the Truthseekers image now. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to change it right now. Yeah. Alien Girl is here, says, I always dig the glasses. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Plus, Ryan says, plus the shades are cool. Yeah. So I'm glad for those. I'm glad you asked, Ryan, because we have had a lot of new people and maybe other people wondered that. A lot of the long timers here know what's going on with that. But yeah, every once in a while, somebody should remind me to let everybody know what the situation with the glasses is, especially to save people from making comments they may, you know, like this idiot with sunglasses or whatever, you know. So listen, tonight, friends, I'm very happy because we got another one of these great things off my to-do list. People have been asking me to cover the Mothman since we started the show almost 2 years ago now. I get emails at least once every couple of weeks. Somebody says, why don't you cover Mothman? And they send me some links. It's an enduring mystery that I have really enjoyed covering and following over the years. And I hope that you enjoyed it too. So what can I say, friends? I'm going to bounce on out of here. Always happy when there's an audience. And tonight we had a great one. I hope that you will come here tomorrow night. We should be broadcasting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time again. We tried this 11 o'clock, but it's too late. The attendance is not good at that time. It's much better at this time. And plus, I like to get the show over with and have a few hours to wind down. Those of you who know me well know that I have terrible insomnia. And if I get done a show at 1 a.m., I might not be in bed until 6 a.m., and that's terrible. Or I might not be sleeping until 6 or 7 a.m. I, like a lot of people, I guess I need a lot of time to wind down and get relaxed and ready for rest. It doesn't, I can't stand people that could just jump in bed and go right to sleep. Who are these people? You know, I got to fight my own brain for a few hours before my brain gives up and lets me rest. So we're going to try to stay at 7 p.m. And I hope that's good for you. It's good for me. Like I said, we had a great audience tonight. Thank you for coming here and spending some time with me. Always happy to be here spending time with you. No place else I would rather be. Always happy to come here and spend some time with you. So what can I say, friends? We'll be back tomorrow getting at it again. Until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.